So let's start with the off season. And when I say off season, I'm talking about the period, of course, where you're not doing a contest prep. So your goal was muscle growth. How did you approach your nutrition in the earlier stages versus the later stages? And did it change?
Yeah, very differently. In the early stages, I think this is obviously before I was competing. What I did is I bulked right up. I was eating anything and everything. And I didn't give a damn what I was eating. I was just eating and I was training very hard. I think 6 days a week is my usual. And I remember I got up to 14 stone at 5'2". And I was fat. You know, I had a belly. I was, I was dreadful. But in that period, that's when I put all my size on. And I think that if I was telling anyone now, that's the secret. You spend the first few years eating like a pig, training like a devil, and just put on as much size as you can and forget about body fat. You can pare that down gradually. I think that was the trick, and it just happened. That's when I got on my size, and I was big then, very big.
So at 5'2", you were 88 kg, 196 pounds at 5'2". Yeah, that's very heavy.
I was very big. I was.
Do you think that was necessary? Like, do you feel that that did more harm than good during that time period?
No, I think it was necessary.
Okay.
I really believe now, if I was advising anyone now, I'd tell them to do that. Being natural for life is a different way than the other side. And I believe that we put on most of our size in the first 3-4 years of training. But it's got to be hard, heavy, brutal, and you've got to match that with eating. So you've got to get that calorie intake in, plenty of protein, plenty of carbs, plenty of fat, whatever. You've got to get it in. And I did that, and I stayed out of shape for years. As I said, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it was. But I put all my size on them. And I don't think I really put on any size after that. I pared the physique down when I learned how to diet properly, carried on with the training, but I think those initial years was when I put all my size in.
What age were you when you first did that approach? And how long did that last for?
Right. Well, I was in my late 20s, maybe 29, 30 even. And I didn't start competing until I was about 34, 35.
Oh, wow.
So,
You got into it late, quite late?
oh yeah, yeah. I was always dabbling with training at an earlier age, but I was never really interested in it. I just enjoyed a little bit of training, you know, with the old
Right.
bull worker and things like that. And I did that years prior, but it was only when I probably reached those later 20s that I thought, I quite like this. I think I'll give it a go. It was just the natural way that I went into it. I didn't care what shape I was in. All I was interested was how much I could lift and how many reps. And I matched that with my eating habits. I just ate and ate and ate. Honestly, 14 stone was fat.
Right. I'm assuming you lost all visibility in your abdominal region.
What abdominals?
Okay.
I was a Michelin man.
That's hilarious. So that period lasted exactly how long would you say? 6 months, a year? That bulk?
No. It was probably 3-4 years.
Okay. So 3, 4 years, then you did your first contest prep.
Yeah, and at the time, I wasn't even thinking about competition at all. I was just doing it because I was enjoying it. I was trying to get big and bulky, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is good. This looks good in a t-shirt, and that's all I was doing it for. And it was only until a certain time I started looking at the bodybuilding magazines and so forth, and I thought, well, yeah, maybe I'll give this a try. I found out about the natural federations. I was either 34 or 35. I can't remember when.
Oh, wow. Okay. But either way, you did the bulk for 3 to 4 years, and then you did your first contest prep, which lasted, I want to say, actually, I don't want to say, you should say, how long did that contest prep last?
Right, well, I was green, wasn't I? I didn't know what the hell I was doing, particularly. I knew I had some size, and I know I brought my weight down in that first competition to 12 stone. So I'd actually lost a couple of stone. So I was still way out of shape, really. I was huge, and I actually won that show, and that was my proudest one. I've still got the trophy. That was my finest hour. I left that building so happy. I was like walking in the air. It was incredible, the feeling. And all I'd won was a novice regional competition.
Why do you think you were so happy?
I think because it was my first time ever done it. Because I was so green. I knew nothing about the sport at all. And I turned up. Tan was dreadful. I turned up and I won the thing. I was just so surprised. I think that's what it was. It was the actual surprise that I couldn't believe that I'd actually won.
So you mentioned the magazines. Do you remember what magazines inspired you to want to get into the natural bodybuilding circuit specifically?
I think it was It was a British magazine. It's called The Beef now, but it was called something different then. And I remember I read an article on Lee Williams, and he had a couple of page spread in this magazine. And I thought, God, he's good. And that kind of inspired me. And I realized there was this natural side to it. You didn't have to go the other route. There was actually competitions for someone like me where we could compete naturally. Because again, I didn't know about that either at that time. So I thought, yeah, let's go for it. There was a local show, probably it was about 25 miles away. And I thought, yeah, all right, I'm going to go for it. So I did it.
Nice. Let's talk about the diet itself. So this bulk period that you did for 3 to 4 years, it wasn't tracking food or anything like that. You were just eating to the point where you couldn't stomach any more food, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. With every meal, you made sure you had protein, carbs, and fats in every single meal?
No, I didn't give a damn.
Oh, you didn't even care about that.
Eating.
You were just
No,
eating.
and no supplements, nothing.
Okay.
No protein powders, nothing. It was just food.
Would you say the quality was high?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of meats, veg, potatoes, rice, pasta. It was pretty good. Lots of eggs, that kind of fare. Lots of milk. I used to drink a lot of that. I read somewhere that Reg Park, the old British bodybuilder, he used to drink tons of milk. So I thought, oh, he looked good, so why not? So I used to drink several pints of that every day as well. Yeah.
So you feel that had a huge impact on your earlier stages of putting on muscle, just being in that excess surplus of calories?
100%. I think that built the foundation.
Right.
And I don't think if I hadn't have gone through that period, I wouldn't have had the foundation. And I'm pretty sure on that.
Well, what's interesting is you were still in your 30s, right? You would think that phase would be done in your early 20s. So that says something still. That's quite interesting to me because when you're a teenager, 19, 20, 21, that's a little bit more expected. But you were actually 28, 29, 30 years old doing this, right?
Yeah.
Was there any cons to it at all? Like I know some people report like loose skin or stretch marks.
No, I was lucky. I was lucky. No, none at all. When I'm looking at it now, I noticed that young lads are competing at a very early age. I almost think I did the right thing by competing later because I think I would have done the same process. If I'd have been younger, say I was 10 years younger, I would have done the same process. I wouldn't have gone straight into competitions like some of these young lads are doing now. I would have really just gone through the same bulking process because I think this is the way to go, especially for naturals. I really believe that.
I did a similar thing. That was really in my early 20s. So I didn't realize he was in your mid 30s. You did your first contest.
I actually reached my peak in my early 40s.
That's awesome.
When I was about 40, 41, 42, 43, that's when I was at my absolute best. And I really don't think I could have got better at any age.
Did you do another period like that where you increased the calories?
No.
Oh, okay.
What I did was when I started competing, as I said, the first show I did was the novice southwest part of England. I won that and I was 12 stone. I remember I did the Britain then a few months later on, and I came in at 11 stone and I won that too. And I was gradually paring it down. I was gradually coming down in weight all the time. And then what I was doing at that time, which I wouldn't do now because I'm older and I've learned from this, was I did the usual idea with bodybuilding where you bulk in the off season. I used to put on maybe a stone and a half, 2 stone, then bring it down again before with a long diet before I did a competition. And I did that for many years until I got a bit wise to it. What I found was, maybe it was my age, I don't know. What I found was that no matter how much weight I was putting on and how much heavier my lifting was and so forth, when it came to competition day, I was weighing almost the same each time. I thought, well, what's the point of putting all this weight on? Having to sort of spend 20, 23 weeks a year dieting just to come back to where I was in the first place.
Did you put muscle on though? Like after that first bulk period, that 3 to 4 years, do you feel like you've gained?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
Quality. Yeah, I think there's a huge misconception in this. I hear about naturals putting on all this weight and all that. Honestly, muscle size. I'm not convinced. And I'm very dubious about natural bodybuilders who put on a lot of size as they get older.
You are convinced that the majority of your muscle growth, if not all of it, came from that first 4 years, 3 to 4 years.
The actual size, not the quality.
Now, when you say quality, do you mean in terms of
separation, definition?
Okay, so that's a dieting. So that's more of a dieting, like you got better at the dieting process and retaining muscle.
That's the secret. You've got to retain what you've got when you diet. Okay. It's no good losing it all when you diet. And I think that's what I mastered. Remember, I told you in the previous videos, I do everything my own way. I might read things and take advice and so on, but at the end of it, I do it, as Frank Sinatra said, my way. I learned how to diet. I learned the trick. I learned the secret, or at least it worked for me. And I also learned how to train, at least what it was for me. And I think I got both of those things pretty good.
So basically, as the time went on, that just, of course, got better and better and better. But as far as the
It did.
actual muscle growth is concerned, you are convinced that that happened in the earlier stages, most of it.
Yes, I'm not saying all of it. I'm not
Right.
saying that, but I'm saying that the huge bulk of it, yes.
So let's say between that first show and then your next season, we'll say, how close was that to each other? Like, how close were those 2 seasons to each other between your first season and your second season?
I was competing every year after that.
Oh, every single year. So you didn't really go through a period where you were in a surplus of calories, or if you were, it was a short period of time?
No, never done that. Never done that. I have done recently. I haven't sort of competed for about the last time I competed was pre-COVID. But before that, I used to compete pretty much every year. I sometimes took a year out, not because I wanted to or bulk or anything like that. It was because I was probably busier in other things in my life at the time. No, I just loved competing. And I felt that what's the point of doing this if you're not going to be competitive, and just do your best? Why waste a few years in the middle when those could have been really productive years?
Especially if you're already mid 30s, your peak is arguably between 35 and 45, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And I also think that maybe what I've also learned is that naturals can burn out. This is what I experienced. And when I observe other naturals, really good ones, they have their peak. They can only hold that peak for a few years and then it's downhill. And I noticed this. And that's what I was saying about younger blokes. Maybe when they're competing and they're really early, for me, maybe that's not the best way to do it. And I think maybe competing a little bit later, after years and years of training and getting it right, maybe that's the best way.
You're not the first, I think, to have reported that feedback based on experience as well, because I think it makes sense also from just taking advantage of being younger, being able to realistically, and I use this word loosely, but get away with these bulks, right? Because like you said, as you get older, how productive is that going to be? I don't think your system can handle it as well, right?
I don't think it's productive at all.
Yeah.
As you get older.
Yeah.
And I've learned through that. I stay in now year round in almost competition shape. I could probably at this very moment step on a stage. No dieting. As I said, I'm a very low body weight. I'm only 9 stone at the moment. My waist is it's probably under 27 inches.
Oh, wow. That's small waist. But you're also 5'2", so in proportion, that makes... Well, then again, I wouldn't know, to be honest. I'm sure there's someone walking around at 5'2" with a 20 or 30-inch waist, right? I'm sure that exists.
Oh, yeah.
Structurally, by the way, like meaning they might be lean, but just their structure, they have maybe a wide pelvis, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Can't change your structure, can you?
Right.
You are what you are.
That's right.
But yeah, I learned quite a long time ago, probably when I reached my 50s, probably. I'm 62 now, so that bulking in the off season was pointless. So even back then, say 10 years ago, I was only putting on probably 11 pound over competition weight in the off season. So I wasn't really going much over. I was always staying in touch. And now I've got in my 60s, I think it's absolutely stupid to get out of shape. I really do. There's no point. There's no way at my age am I going to put on any size. And I'd be kidding myself if I thought I could. I really don't. As I said, my weight has gradually come down and down and down over the years. It's like, for example, when I was at my absolute peak, I used to weigh in at about 10 stone 2, 10 stone 3 stage weight. Now I'm 9 stone.
That's about 15, almost 20 pounds of a difference from now versus your peak.
Yeah.
That's lean body mass for the most part.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've lost size, but I still look good.
Yeah, of course. Of course. That's without a doubt, especially the photos I use. I'm going to put some photos up in this video so people watching can see. The ones that you just sent. So with regards to that process of losing that lean body mass, do you think that's just age? Because you are 62. Okay, so 62 years old. Or do you think that has to do with the fact that the pandemic hit, your training changed completely? You went from resistance training with free weights and body weight to pretty much bands. What do you think? What do you attribute that 20-pound loss?
Right. No, none of that. I think it's just generally aging. I think you get to a peak. Remember, we're talking about lifetime natural athletes here.
Yes, yes.
We can't keep our hormones up like we used to. I got in a burnout stage where I was hammering my body so much when I was in my early 40s. I tore my hamstring probably when I was about 46, something like that. Maybe a little bit later, 47, 48. And I was never the same after that.
You mentioned that. You know what's interesting to me? I would think that like as you approach your 50s and 60s, you'll be able to speak to this better. But the progression isn't building muscle. It's how well can you fight off losing it. That is the progression.
That is what we should be aiming at. It's not to gain it, but to maintain it.
Take enjoyment in that. Like if you're listening to this and you're in your 50s and 60s now, what about on the other end of the spectrum where you might have people thinking, oh, I'm 60, it's over for me, forget it. No, wait, the progression could be literally, how well can I keep what I have built all these years? Can
Absolutely.
I make this a game and extract enjoyment out of this process, right?
What I came to, I think what you look at is we all would love to stay as we used to be. I'd love to look like I did 20 years ago. But I don't. You see, what I've learned is I don't want to be a good 40-year-old. I want to be a good 62-year-old. Once upon a time, I could compete with anyone. Now I couldn't, but I think I could really compete with people of my own age. I really do.
The Grandmasters.
Yeah, I think I could really compete at this age.
I should have a show, Mr. Longevity, and do it just for the Grandmasters. That would be cool, right?
Yeah, that would be great. I think that's the beauty of this sport, is the longevity.
Yes.
We can do this all our lives. It's a terrific sport, and you feel so damn good.
Let's talk about that, the healthy part. So when you were doing these bulks, now, first off, I'm sure the feeling versus when you did it in your 30s versus a little bit later and you realized that, okay, this is not productive anymore. I'm sure also some of that was how you felt as well, like in terms of, because it's not the healthiest thing to do these extreme bulks, right?
Oh, no. Obviously, in the scheme of bodybuilding, I wasn't huge, but I felt lousy at that sort of weight. You just feel bloated and lumbering. Now I'm at a lighter weight, even though I'm a lot older, then I feel a lot fitter.
What weight did you feel the best, the healthiest? Let's take your peak, right? I know now is different. You can touch on that as well, but let's take your peak contest weight versus that off-season weight. Where did you feel the healthiest, relatively speaking?
Competition weight.
Really? Like on stage?
Yeah, that's when I was at my happiest.
You felt good.
You got to remember, Kenny, that most people, well, I can't speak for people, a lot of people find dieting really difficult. I used to stay in shape at that time for months and months on end. So I could stay in shape, say when I was at my peaks in the early 40s, I used to stay in shape for several months. I used to get in shape and stay there until all my shows were over. So I might do 3 shows in that year, or I might do a lot of guest appearances and so on. But I was ready every week and I liked it.
The feedback that I've gotten with competitors stepping on stages, they look their best, but they feel their absolute worst.
No, I'm totally different.
Oh, wow. You're
I
the
love being in
outlier.
shape.
Okay.
Definitely, and I'm not kidding you, even now it feels so good. Every time you look in the mirror, you know, it's a bit egotistical, but you look and think, yeah, that's good. And whereupon, I guess most people, if you're walking around and you're really out of shape and you look in the mirror, you don't really want to look in the mirror. There is a huge factor of well-being when you feel in shape, especially as you get older. When you were younger, you kind of just took it in your stride. You didn't really give it much thought. But as you get older and you think, well, yeah, you know, you're getting old or older, maybe that it's more important.
You're right.
You know, to stay in shape. It really is. Health-wise. I'm not talking just what you look like in the mirror. I'm talking generally health-wise. It's got to be the right way.
To ask you this with regards to your training, because we were talking about how you approached it when you were competing. And you mentioned you trained 6 days per week. You did 2 exercises per body part, but you did lots of sets, right? You noticed for you personally that the reps would actually increase from set to set, even after putting in what you felt was a lot of effort per set.
It doesn't make sense, does it?